My mother has a saying, if you work hard, life will just give you more work. Her advice, however, was different for girls. She claimed that laziness was a virtue. The lazier you are, the happier your life. Naturally, I took her words to heart. Even after realizing I was cast as the villainess in a storybook life, I couldn't be bothered to care. As long as I stayed perfectly idle, fate wouldn't bother chasing me. The heroine, Claire Jensen, had just transferred to our elite academy on a scholarship. The moment she arrived, the story's main plot officially began. Within a single day, she had a chance encounter with both the school's academic prodigy and its notorious bad boy. Naturally, both fell hopelessly for her, sparking a frenzy online. Why the fuss? Because those two were widely regarded as the most attractive boys in the academy, and also two of my potential fiancés. My family's wealth is legendary. Generations of fortune left me a multi-millionaire heiress before I even graduated. My mother's philosophy? Don't look for trouble when it doesn't exist. Wealth managed itself. All I had to do was live and enjoy it. She had already handpicked a few extremely good-looking candidates for my future husband, Aiden Cross, the academic prodigy, and Jax Ryder, the untamable king of the school. I had no particular interest in them, though I could appreciate a good-looking face. But it was obvious. Neither was ever meant to be mine. In my own world, I was a flawless heiress destined for a life of leisure. In the novel's world, I was the villainess, doomed to ruin myself and my family, while the hero and heroine sailed into happily ever after. A tragic ending, but one I found oddly comforting. If I remained lazy enough, I couldn't possibly wreck anything. Claire was sharp, no doubt about it. Her academic talent had earned her a full scholarship. Her desk mate, eager to gossip, whispered, Kasha Thorne. She's the queen bee here. Heiress, socialite, and apparently, she's already lined up potential fiancés. Aiden and Jax are on her list. Claire's expression softened, almost pitying. Sure, that's a power fantasy, she said. But I think a life you build yourself is more meaningful. Hard work has its own rewards. I couldn't argue. Some people spend their lives chasing a single opportunity. I wasn't one of them. I was the opportunity. That brief gossip told me Claire wasn't innocent. She was calculated, a black lotus among white ones, seeking shortcuts. And in a school for the elite, wealthy targets were plentiful. Aiden Cross became her first target. I wasn't surprised when the inevitable clash happened. Aiden, ever faithful to me, was interrupted when Claire accidentally spilled her drink on him, perfectly, evenly. No part of his outfit spared. Claire panicked. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for it. I almost expected her to ask for his number, but instead she said, scan my code, I'll transfer you the money. It was painfully cliché. Surely Aiden wouldn't fall for that, right? Wrong. The plot had its way. Aiden, completely smitten, scanned her code as if hypnotized. I pulled out my phone and texted my mother. Me. Her Majesty, the Queen Mother, I trust you are well. Mom. Spit it out. Me. Aiden Cross is trouble. Pull our investments. Mom. Emoji. Thumbs up. Tattling had been a skill I mastered long ago. Lazy or not, I wasn't letting a fool slide. Soon, the Cross family's company felt the impact. Projects were defunded, partnerships severed, stock plummeted. Old Mr. Cross nearly had a heart attack. The news reached them from my mother's cool, casual statement. Kasha finds Aiden exhausting. We wouldn't want to hold him back. The result? Aiden was summoned home for a family discussion, reportedly chased around the mansion by his father wielding a golf club. When I saw him a few days later, two black eyes confirmed he'd learned his lesson. By then, Claire and Aiden had become inseparable, bonded over what seemed like mutual understanding. From Aiden's perspective, my actions were tyrannical. Wealthy Kasha destroying love with money. Claire saw it the same way. She confronted me in class, righteous fury in her voice. Kasha Thorne, you've gone too far. Just because Aiden added you as a contact, you used your family's power to crush him? You can't buy feelings. The classroom went silent. Aiden stood quietly behind her. I raised an eyebrow and said simply, oh. Claire blinked. You, just say, oh. I leaned back, casual, and offered the water on her desk. Finished? Throat hurt. She fumed. The students watched in stunned silence, and Aiden, finally seeing the futility of her outrage, murmured, it's my fault. I made her angry. She has every right. Claire's fury redirected. She slapped him hard across the face and stormed out. Aiden chased after her, and that was the end of it, for me at least. The plot had clearly gone off script. After Claire patched things up with Aiden, he came crawling back to me, and I couldn't help but wonder. Weren't geniuses supposed to be simple-minded? How was he so good at scheming? Jack's rider appeared, blocking his path. Aiden's face twisted in frustration. "Jax, what's this?" he demanded. Jack sneered. "You know exactly what it means. You're out. Stay off my turf." Aiden lunged at him, but Jax caught his fist effortlessly. "Hit the gym, little man," he mocked. Ashen with rage, Aiden stormed off. Claire watched with gleaming eyes. Perhaps Jax was the better choice, more backbone than Aiden. And if she could steal him from Kasha Thorne, that would be sweet revenge. Aiden's family was declining. He'd become stingy. Lucky for her, she hadn't officially claimed him. Options were always valuable. With that thought, Claire approached. "Jax, remember me? We met the first day of school," she said, cheeks pink. Jax frowned. "What do you want?" She lowered her gaze, offering a fragile smile. "I envy Kasha for having you as a friend. I'd like to be your friend, too. Would that be okay?" My jaw dropped. That was her big move? Awkward and clumsy. Was this really the heroine? Jax looked her over. "The new transfer student?" "Yes. I'm Claire Jensen. You remember me, right?" I felt my patience snap. Jax was supposed to be mine. I had found him in an orphanage, well, legally adopted and groomed to manage my moods and emotions. Years of investment had gone into him, and now someone else was trying to take him. For the first time, I felt a dangerous thrill, the urge to go on the offensive against the story's heroine. What if I struck first? What would happen? Could I rewrite the plot? Jax, as always, ignored Claire and came directly to me. His focus was solely on calming my temper. I couldn't help but admire him. Emotional labor like this had its own value, worth more than gold if someone had to pay for it. "Kasha, is something wrong?" he asked, eyes filled with unwavering devotion. Could love be feigned? Could devotion be an act? I wasn't sure, but I needed to know. "Jax, whose side are you on?" My voice betrayed a desperation I usually masked. Without hesitation, he replied, "I'm yours, Kasha." Perfect. Flawless. But I doubted its sincerity. Was it genuine or just a performance? Claire, seething, assumed I was deliberately humiliating her. "Jax, what if I told you to never speak to her again?" He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then answered smoothly, "Whatever you say, Kasha. I'll do it." In that instant, I understood fully. I was the villainess. Any time Claire desired something of mine, my resistance made me part of the story's conflict. My shoulders relaxed. I could revert to my harmless persona. "Just kidding," I said lightly. "Why would I stop you from making friends?" Jax obeyed, moving away from Claire. She glared at me, furious. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about an experiment. I wanted to test what would happen if I took direct action against Claire, just a small test. Hesitation was costly. One sunny afternoon, my people staged a kidnapping. According to the plan, a cross would be carved onto her face. Claire screamed, terrified. Her first suspicion? Me. "Kasha Thorne sent you, didn't she? Tell her to come out," she shrieked. I watched from behind a one-way mirror. The catastrophe I'd imagined never came, but a strange anxiety crept over me. The plastic surgeon I'd hired was ready to intervene. No harm would come to her permanently. Half an hour passed. Claire's screams echoed through the empty building. Then reality warped. Time rewound. Claire, remembering the previous scenario, avoided the route entirely. The heroine's power was clear. She couldn't be harmed. Time reset to protect her. Memories intact. I felt a wave of panic. No matter my actions, I couldn't win. If this continued, the tragic ending from the novel would come for me, and for my mother, too. My family would suffer. I refused to let that happen. Claire hadn't beaten me. The plot had. After that failed experiment, I kept my distance from Jax. I couldn't trust anyone immune to the plot's influence. A time bomb was best left far away. Claire didn't miss her chance. She stayed close to Jax, flaunting her presence. He didn't push her away. Soon, they were seen together constantly. She even kept Aiden dangling while charming other wealthy boys. In this world, everyone loved her, everyone envied her. To avoid catastrophe, I had to escape. I chose to go abroad, bringing my mother with me. Aiden? Not worth my time. Jax? Not worth my time. I wanted my money, my power, my status, and my family. I couldn't defeat Claire, but I could ensure I wasn't her stepping stone. As long as I stayed out of her reach, she wouldn't be able to find me or interfere with my life. 3 years flashed by. Claire could never have left the country, not on her own. I had thought myself safe, far from the story's reach, confident the plot couldn't force me into its script. I was congratulating myself for fleeing when I saw them, striding toward me, Claire and Jax. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. Then Claire looked up and Jax's head snapped my way, in a crowd that should have swallowed us all. His gaze found me like a homing missile. The color drained from my face. His expression was colder than I had ever seen. The gentle curve of his smile collapsed into something hard and dangerous. He shoved Claire aside and started toward me. My first instinct was to run, and for a moment the heels on my feet didn't slow me. I ducked into the crush of shoppers and managed to get away, but it wasn't until I was locked inside my apartment that the terror fully landed. The plot could reach me even when I ran. I wasn't afraid of Jax. Exactly, I was afraid of Claire. In this world, she was the axis. Everyone else just a piece moving to make her story possible. If she was kind at heart, maybe it would be one thing, but she wasn't. My wealth, my place, my very existence were, in her eyes, obstacles to remove. So I ran again, this time by leaving the country. I thought that would break the chain. It did not. The private jet had lifted off, when everything snapped back to the mall, to that first moment. Claire wore the same smirk, Jax the same storm. I realized, with a cold pitch in my stomach, that she remembered. More than that, the plot had leveled her up during those 3 years. Claire returned as something different, poised and self-possessed. She approached me like a long-lost relative. "Kasha," she said, warm and practiced, "it's been 3 years. So good to see you." I stayed silent, but she took my hand, nails soft against my palm, and announced casually, "Let me introduce myself properly. I'm your sister, your full-blooded sister." The floor dropped out beneath me. My parents had only ever had one child, me. If she claimed to be family, there was only one explanation. The plot had rewritten itself. Jax stood at Claire's side, a shadowed sentinel. Whatever the old arrangement had been, it had flipped. Claire's smile shone like a coronation. My head spun, and then my mother appeared, as if on cue. She looked past me, eyes filled with a tenderness I had never seen reserved for anyone but me. "Oh, my dear Claire," she cooed, smoothing Claire's hair. "You must be tired. Stay with Mommy. Don't ever leave again." The words collapsed over me like ice. Claire told us, with a soft, triumphant air, that the world was built to obey her. She had been assigned a new identity, she explained, and now she was my sister. My mother's face softened entirely for Claire, while she looked through me, or perhaps past me, as if I were a draft that hadn't been signed. "Who do you love more, Mommy, me, or my sister?" Claire asked, eyes glinting. My mother hesitated, then chose. Her affection folded neatly into Claire's hands and away from me. "Kasha is the older one. Act like someone responsible," she said, voice brisk, as though deciding who got the heirloom was a matter of household management. In a single motion, everything I had was rearranged. Claire moved into our home, brought Jax with her, and immediately assumed the role of the gracious daughter, winning my mother's trust and control. The revelation didn't make me furious at first, only hollow. The plot had taken the one thing I could not suffer to lose, and handed it to her. Claire settled in like she had always belonged and began to orchestrate things, charming my mother, taking on the duties of the family's public face. She no longer treated me as an opponent. She treated me as something to be managed. "Kasha, aren't you curious how this all works?" she asked, as if explaining a game she designed. She spoke aloud what she'd already hinted at, that she wrote and rewrote this world as she pleased. "I could have taken your life outright in the original plan," she said casually, "but I found it more interesting that you refused to play along." Her words were a damage report disguised as small talk. She told me that because I had tried to run, it had taken 3 years for the plot to correct itself. For a moment, I felt something dangerous, warm, and bright inside me. I reached for her, hands closing around her throat in a movement that surprised even me. What if she died? I thought. Could she still rewrite what's left? I had been raised to be civilized, but this creature was something else, something that had stolen my life. Her eyes fluttered as the pressure tightened. For a second I tasted triumph, Then the world snapped back, the scene reversing like film. Failure. Claire was sitting on the sofa, unharmed, but the look of shock on her face told me she remembered my attack. I lunged again, relentless. When a fruit knife glinted in the kitchen, I used it, slashing into her chest, crimson blooming almost immediately. She screamed, cursing me, promising the worst imaginable punishments, vowing ruin and agony. Her threats were venom, but I didn't stop. If I could not be spared the novel's ending, I decided I would drag everything down with me. Time rewound, again and again. Each reset taught me more about the rules here, and each reset hardened my desperation. If she could keep rewriting, then I would force the loop to its limits. If we were trapped together in this broken, repeating world, then I would make sure none of us survived it unscarred. I realized I couldn't end her. Every attempt failed. Time rewound. She fled, I caught her again. Claire was exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained. I, on the other hand, felt an unexpected surge of energy. Years of contained frustration and anger finally had an outlet. For my mother, I could have endured, hidden, sacrificed, but when Claire targeted my family, passivity was no longer an option. She could, with ease, decide the fate of everyone around her. The moment I realized that, I knew I had to act. The only reason I had her within reach now was her own overconfidence. She relied on the sister plotline because she wanted to see me suffer. She had my mother involved to chain me to her story. Why the plot mattered to her, I still didn't know. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had her, and if I let her go, she would drag me and everyone I loved down with her. I grabbed a vase and swung it, knocking her unconscious. That wasn't enough. I raised another, ready to strike, until Jax intervened. "That's enough, Kasha," he said. I shook him off, glaring, but he gripped my wrist, steadying me. "Kasha, this is pointless. You're just locking yourself into a loop." I froze. He remembered. The loops, the resets, the moments I had believed were mine alone. He had them too. "Were you trying to protect her?" I demanded. His face tightened with hurt. "After all these years, is that how you see me? That's why you left me behind, went abroad without a word." I looked away, silent. He was right. I had never trusted him, written him off completely because of Aiden. Jax took a deep breath and explained the last 3 years. He had been the reason Claire struggled to find me. He had subtly interfered, leading her on false paths, even attempting to stop her himself, only to be prevented by some invisible force. In the end, he stayed by her side to protect me. I realized how simple the solution had been all along: to make her powerless, deny her the ability to rewind time or alter reality. I administered a potent sedative, enough to keep her asleep for 2 days. When she woke, she was on a remote, deserted island in the South Indian Ocean, entirely cut off from civilization. Guards ensured she could not escape. She had power in the original story, but now she was rendered powerless, trapped. Her shouts and threats rang hollow against the endless sea. She raged, pleaded, bargained, and slowly descended into isolation, stripped of her influence. Alive, but powerless, she became a shadow of herself, a creature of instinct and fear, with no one to answer to but the island and its relentless solitude. It was that simple. Remove her agency, remove her ability to manipulate the world, and the threat vanished. With Claire neutralized, the plot could no longer manipulate me. Her presence faded from everyone else's memory. Even my mother returned to being the person she had been before Claire appeared. Jax remained by my side, unwavering. Years of loyalty and vigilance had ensured the safety I had once thought impossible. I looked at him and realized I owed a debt to my younger self, the girl who had picked a playmate from an orphanage, unknowingly shaping a protector who would one day save me. I realized I couldn't end her. Every attempt failed. Time rewound. She fled, I caught her again. Claire was exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained. I, on the other hand, felt an unexpected surge of energy. Years of contained frustration and anger finally had an outlet. For my mother, I could have endured, hidden, sacrificed, but when Claire targeted my family, passivity was no longer an option. She could, with ease, decide the fate of everyone around her. The moment I realized that, I knew I had to act. The only reason I had her within reach now was her own overconfidence. She relied on the sister plotline because she wanted to see me suffer. She had my mother involved to chain me to her story. Why the plot mattered to her, I still didn't know. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had her, and if I let her go, she would drag me and everyone I loved down with her. I grabbed a vase and swung it, knocking her unconscious. That wasn't enough. I raised another, ready to strike, until Jax intervened. "That's enough, Kasha," he said. I shook him off, glaring, but he gripped my wrist, steadying me. "Kasha, this is pointless. You're just locking yourself into a loop." I froze. He remembered. The loops, the resets, the moments I had believed were mine alone, he had them too. "Were you trying to protect her?" I demanded. His face tightened with hurt. "After all these years, is that how you see me? That's why you left me behind, went abroad without a word." I looked away, silent.
He was right.
I had never trusted him, written him off completely because of Aiden. Jax took a deep breath and explained the last 3 years. He had been the reason Claire struggled to find me. He had subtly interfered, leading her on false paths, even attempting to stop her himself, only to be prevented by some invisible force. In the end, he stayed by her side to protect me. I realized how simple the solution had been all along: to make her powerless, deny her the ability to rewind time or alter reality. I administered a potent sedative, enough to keep her asleep for 2 days. When she woke, she was on a remote, deserted island in the South Indian Ocean, entirely cut off from civilization. Guards ensured she could not escape. She had power in the original story, but now she was rendered powerless, trapped. Her shouts and threats rang hollow against the endless sea. She raged, pleaded, bargained, and slowly descended into isolation, stripped of her influence. Alive, but powerless, she became a shadow of herself, a creature of instinct and fear, with no one to answer to but the island and its relentless solitude. It had been astonishingly simple once I understood the mechanics of Claire's power. All along, she had been dependent on proximity, on my presence, to wield her reality-bending abilities. Remove her from that context, and her dominion dissolved. The solution was elegant in its brutality. If she could no longer touch the plot, she could no longer touch me. I watched her unconscious form, the rise and fall of her chest, and felt a cold clarity settle over me. She had underestimated me. She had assumed that her clever manipulation and infinite rewinds gave her absolute control. But even the most meticulously written heroine could not function without her narrative thread anchored somewhere, and that somewhere had been me. The sedative worked perfectly. When she awoke, the world had shifted entirely. The island was remote, a speck of land in the South Indian Ocean, utterly devoid of civilization. The harsh sun beat down on jagged cliffs and scrubby bushes. The only sounds were the distant crash of waves and the occasional cry of an unseen seabird. Guards circled the island, relentless and discreet, ensuring she could not leave even if she attempted to escape. She screamed. She raged. She threatened me across the waves of her own powerlessness, declaring she was the creator of the world, that I was nothing but a pawn, that she could obliterate me with a thought. But the truth had been revealed. In this environment, she was no longer the author. Here, she was a prisoner of circumstance, stripped of her abilities, forced to confront herself without the safety net of time manipulation or narrative escape. At first, she thrashed, pacing, clawing at the rocks and sand, trying to find leverage, some weakness in the guards, some loophole. But none existed. Over weeks and months, her rage gradually dimmed. She discovered that survival demanded patience, strategy, adaptation, but her brilliance, once shaped to manipulation and influence, faltered against the unyielding isolation. She was no longer the creator. She was prey in her own story. Years passed. The world beyond her island continued without her. She lived, but she lived like a shadow, stripped of her memories of power, reduced to basic survival instincts. Hunger, thirst, fatigue, pain, all the visceral sensations of life replaced the intoxicating thrill of control she had once wielded so effortlessly. The world had assimilated her, erased her narrative influence. She had not died, but she had ceased to be a force within it. And somewhere deep inside, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction in vengeance. Only a profound, grim understanding. This was justice as dictated by necessity, a conclusion arrived at through calculation and survival, rather than emotion. With Claire removed, the equilibrium of my world slowly returned. People went about their lives as though she had never existed. My mother's attention and affection flowed naturally toward me once again, unclouded by manipulation or guilt. The family dynamic I had once known, though always tempered by wealth and expectation, became familiar and comfortable once more. Jax remained at my side, steadfast and unwavering. The years of loyalty, the quiet vigilance, the unseen battles fought on my behalf, all culminated in a bond deeper than I had ever realized. I began to understand the magnitude of what I had created with my youthful games, the care and attention I had invested in him. He had grown into a protector, a partner, and a mirror of my own strength, standing unwavering when I was vulnerable. Life continued with its usual rhythm, the managing of wealth, the navigating of social power, the indulgences of privilege and leisure. But something had shifted in me. I was no longer merely a heiress, a figure of aesthetic admiration or passive influence. I was someone who had survived the impossible, who had faced a being capable of rewriting reality itself, and had endured. The knowledge of that survival gave me a serenity and sharpness I had never possessed before. Occasionally, I would reflect on Claire, on the power she once wielded, and on the strange mercy of leaving her alive. There was a haunting in the knowledge that she still breathed, still existed, even if stripped of her former authority. It reminded me of the fragility of power, of how easily control could be snatched away. It reminded me of the value of vigilance. Jax and I grew closer over the years, not just as companions, but as equals in understanding and intent. One afternoon, sitting in the study where I often reviewed investments and plans, he looked up from the papers he had been quietly organizing. His gaze met mine, steady, unflinching. "Kasha," he said softly, "I've always believed that to stand by someone, truly, is the deepest form of devotion. You survived everything, and I've survived with you. But now, when will you allow us to step forward together? When will we marry?" I paused, considering him, considering everything we had endured, the trials, the treacheries, the relentless currents of fate we had both navigated. And then I smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile. For the first time in years, I could answer freely, without fear of the plot, without the looming shadow of a heroine rewriting my fate.
"Soon," I said.
Very soon. It was not just a declaration of marriage, it was a declaration of survival, of triumph, and of the reclamation of my own story. For the first time, I was no longer the pawn or the villainess. I was the author of my own life.